Welcome,
Hello.
Joseph. Thanks
Hello,
thanks for
hello.
joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I had technical issues. My camera was not working,
These things happen, even to the best tech people.
even to the best of us. Yes, so I'm giving a talk. It's a play on words. And so the famous book is, the singularity is near. My talk
Mhm.
is the singularity is here-ish, right? So it's
Yep.
a play on words. We'll call it 20 minutes. So is my presentation here? Very cool. So yeah, the singularity is here-ish, right? Um, so this is the talk outline, right? Ray Kurzweil, he predicted the singularity is when the ability of a computer can overtake the ability of humans. And that should occur in like 2045, about like 20 years away. But what if I told you that it was already here in ways we could have never originally imagined? So, originally it was this idea of, I have a graph that I can show. We'll go there real quick and we'll come back. It's like this. I love this graph because it's comical, but it's true at the same time. Is that it shows this almost steady linear curve, and then it just has this huge hockey stick saying, this is the human progress through time, all the innovation, all the technology iterations, and this is where we are, circa 2019, 2020, 2022. And this is what's going to happen, with the advancements of like NLPs and large language models, and just the advancements of technology. And this is how it's going to look. And so that was the original concept. But I'm here to tell you is at our agency and what we're doing right now, what we're building is there's cool things to where we're using large language models and simple automation. And it is up to you guys, or up to the viewer, to determine whether or not it passes the Turing test and whether or not it's the closest thing we have to true AGI. So this is me. The introduction was right. So I was born into a family of three sisters, the youngest of them, and we were always involved in like sciences and technologies and stuff like that. And so, high school, I started a tech club, built a lot of like iOS applications, used stuff like Raspberry Pis, just had a lot of fun there, like I'm sure everyone. Um, then yeah, I started this agency, bootstrapped it back in 2019, and grew it to like a multi-million-dollar agency, ranked on Crunchbase, all that fun stuff. And so here's where we are at. So we have kind of two questions, right? Is what is a singularity, and here-ish, right? What do both of those mean? And those two questions will help us answer and get to a conclusion of my talk. And so the singularity, it wasn't conceived by Ray Kurzweil, but it was kind of popularized by him. So, he wrote this book, The Singularity is Near, and it talks about a point in time um, where just the growth is uncontrollable, irreversible, and there's no going back from technology advancing well over the human capabilities. So the best way to think about it, the best thought experiment is, um, imagine like multiple Nobel Prize award winners just being given every minute, to where things are just the hardest computer science problems, the hardest problems to ever exist, are being solved within minutes. And this is kind of this idea of the technological singularity, is that it's kind of this hypothesis that an intelligent agent, it could be a singular or multiple, is so smart that it's solving these problems that we've struggled for decades, in a matter of minutes, maybe seconds, hours, stuff like that. And so this is the graph, right? Like I said, I love this graph. The human progress through time, and then you're here. This is kind of the demonstration of what the singularity would look like, in terms of innovation and iteration and all that fun stuff. And so what is Hereish? And so I started my agency, and it's a marketing agency, right? So we operate, advise, manage brands on social media platforms, modern media platforms, all that fun stuff. Um, but it's not a tech company. And so growing up, always being involved in tech, learning how to code when I was like 10 or 11, um, and just being kind of like looking at this idea of AGI and the singularity as like, this is something that's going to happen in my lifetime. Um, I was like anyone else, to where you automatically come to these headlines, right? Robots could take over 20 million jobs by 2030, and a lot of these headlines are misleading. But it made it made my brain begin to wonder of like, okay, what my team is doing at RethDigital is that going to become antiquated in a matter of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Can creativity be automated? Can it be replaced by AGI? Um, and so what we came to find out is that creativity cannot, but media can. So the ability to add automation where there's customer interactions or like replying to tweets or creating tweets, this can easily be replaced, and we've already done it now in today's day and age. So think of the brands you interact with on social media, like Costco or like Lululemon, all these brands where you're DMing the customer service rep, you're replying to tweets, you're adding them saying, "Oh, I'm having this issue. I can't log into my account." All of that's being responded by what you think is a person. And it probably is as of right now for most brands, not the brands that we work with. But the brands that we work with, we use kind of I mean, it's kind of a part of our family now, but a bot called Echo that we named and we coined, to where we call it, the world's first AI social media marketer, to where we use large language models with the help of automation and proxies. And it basically, I mean, we've had zero detection so far. It replaces the modern day social media manager of the person creating captions, replying to comments, replying to DMs, all these things that go into the back end of a marketing agency. And so the way that came to be is, circa 2019, 2020, I was just thinking, okay, could we be replaced? When will that happen? In terms of like us being a marketing agency, and can we kind of do it before someone else replaces us? It's kind of this ironic idea of saying, can we replace ourselves before someone else replaces us with a $9, $10 piece of software? So yeah, like these titles, will a robot take your job? Um, AI will create more jobs. So this is kind of a more accurate title that, AI will end up creating more jobs, but just the skills aren't even existing yet. Like scientists, more jobs in IT, stuff like that. And so come, 2020, coming out of this is, I'll explain this slide. Coming out of 2020, with COVID and our agency definitely took a downturn, to where I was kind of at a standstill to where we weren't. I mean, most marketing firms aren't applying any form of machine learning, AI, or even a solid having solid tech stacks for that matter. Um, but growing up, I always wanted to run a tech company, and it just so happened that I started running a marketing agency because, in high school I just started messing around with the graphic design, and I happened to be relatively good for my age. And so I just started working with local businesses around my city, and then that kind of transpired to over time just continuing to iterate, and then starting to work with big brands like Whole Foods, HBO and Discovery Channel, all these big brands that we've worked with. And then I wasn't able to take on the task to start hiring people, and that's kind of how most marketing agencies come to be, right? So then come 2020, right? I'm kind of stuck with the idea of like, okay, we're not iterating, and I'm just scared of this idea of AI and the simulation and all these things, the singularity. And so like any 18-year-old at the time, I didn't go out and buy a Lamborghini. I was like, let's commit like $300,000 over the next 12 months to this project called Echo One. And basically, the mission is creating the world's first AI social media marketer. And so it's essentially replacing one very, very important variable of a marketing team. Someone argue the most important, because this is the person creating the captions, writing the comments, um, kind of giving that customer experience sentiment 24/7. And so this job is very, very important. And this is what we get paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do for brands. And so saying, okay, can we replace this, and how is this possible? Is it possible? Right. Because I'm sure everyone was familiar with like bots on like Instagram and stuff. And it was basically just copy paste of like, oh, this picture is beautiful, or like heart emojis, stuff like that. It was not, uh, it was easy to detect with like, this is a bot, this is copy and pasted. And so we get into the question of, how are we going to do this? And so it's kind of, we're doing this mainly with LLMs, and then the help of proxies and automation. And so the question is, what are LLMs? So LLMs, large language models, they can translate language, write essays, generate compute code, all with limited and no supervision. But the question is, how can they do these things? And so GPT-3, um, one of the most popular large language models by OpenAI, one of Musk's companies. These are the top 10 data sets it uses to train the actual language processor. And stuff like LibGen, Wikipedia, Google, basically it scrapes almost the entire accessible internet, and uses this data to train its language model to learn how to predict text in a way that's human-like, right? So it's very indistinguishable from uh, whether or not it's a human or a computer. Um, and so, every day, GPT-3, OpenAI's large language model, which isn't the biggest one, and I have a slide for that, generates the equivalent of an entire U.S. public library, 80,000 books of new content. And so these are the titles, right? The emerging types of language models and why they matter. Is it a new Moore's law? And how it will get weirder with the rise of large language models. And so, what kind of attracted me to even saying, okay, is this possible? Could we do this? Um, and is this worth, investing $300,000 over the next 12 months on engineers, on resources, or on R&D for a relatively small agency? Is it worth it? And so I came across this article way back when, like, right, 2020, to where the GPT-3, someone used the GPT-3 OpenAI's API and posed it as a human on Ask Reddit for a week. And the results were pretty shocking, is that no one detected it at all. And if anything, it got a lot of upvotes, to where people were interacting with this bot more than they were interacting with real people, or what we presume to be real people. And so this was kind of the green light for me to say, let's do this. Let's invest a good deal of money, and let's see if we can actually create not true AGI, but kind of something good enough to, for lack of better words, trick the human into thinking it's an actual human interaction, so that it's a seamless experience across the brands that we operate. And so these are kind of all of the large language models as of April 2022. And so you can see GPT, where is it? GPT-3 right here on the on the left corner. And so you can see the progression that's happened. We have right here on the right, Google's Palm. You can see how it's much bigger, the large language model. And so GPT-3 kind of started this trend of these big tech companies investing millions and millions of dollars into creating bigger and bigger large language models. And the way large language models work is that, at least as of right now, what we know is they scale with more money invested and more data being fed. And so the larger the large language model is, and the more parameters it has, but essentially the smarter it becomes. Now it also depends on the data you're feeding it. So like GPT-J, it's a much smaller language model, but it does execute coding much better than GPT-3, just because it's been trained on a lot more. Like it was trained primarily on GitHub, not primarily, but mostly on GitHub. As with GPT-3, it was scraping like the Wikipedias and like the data sets that we saw before, LibGen, and all that fun stuff. And so then we get to, okay, that's large language models. We understand. I thought I had a slide. We understand what they are, and how they work, and kind of how powerful they are, and we're kind of just scratching the surface. And so, we have access to GPT-J and GPT-3, and those are the large language models that we're using as of right now. And so that's kind of the backbone of the technology that we're building. But the next problem is, and some people might not be aware of this, but I think everyone is vaguely, is kind of how there's not as many bots on social media, but there's been, a lot of talk of like Twitter being, majority bots on the platform. And then Instagram, you go in a comment section, you'll see a bunch of bots and bots and bots. Let me see if we're getting. Okay, I have a few more minutes, so I have to cover, because I had some camera issues. So I'll try and finish shortly. But so there's lots of bots and bots and bots on these platforms. And so what Instagram did and what most social media platforms did is they basically reduced the API rate limit. And so before it was 5,000 calls per hour, and now it's like 200 calls per hour. And so this is a very big decrease in the amount of calls you can do to the API, which is not good for what we're building, right? It's not good for automation, because you could easily get permabanned or temporary banned, and we have. But the kind of the way we solve this is through, um, where is it? It's through proxies, right? And so, high frequency activities from a single IP for a long period of time can get a temporary ban by Instagram, or even many people have got permabans. So that was established in 2018. Before then, a lot of people were um, copy and pasting the same comments on a bunch of people's posts, doing a lot of follow, no follow, because the API calls, you could do as many as you wanted from a single IP. The issue now is that you need something called proxies, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, which is basically jumping from different IP addresses as long as they're localized, and Instagram's none the wiser. And so that's kind of the how, in a nutshell, how we solve the problem of getting banned, getting permabanned, getting temporary banned on these platforms. And so this is kind of just an excerpt of how this is GPT-3, how GPT-3 and a human conversate with each other. Right. So the human asks, how can you be sure God exists? And the AI says, that's the best part. I can still be sure. Human, and who created you? AI. The AI says, open AI. And so if you read this conversation, and if you kind of look up conversations with, GPT-3 and a human, or if you even mess around with the playground and OpenAI, and their API, you can see how it's working. You can actually see the call that it's making with the prompt. And you can just see how it's just predicting this text very, very accurately, to where you're not even sure if you're talking to a human or if you're not. And of course, there is a lot of screw ups and there are a lot of mess ups, and you can tell. But when you're using it at such a limited capacity, like replying to DMs, creating comments, replying to tweets, and you give it a certain prompt with a certain tone, it's very hard for there to be kind of gaping holes in the system, to where we've had zero detections over the past you know, over the past 6 months that we've been working with Echo on the brands that we've been operating with. I'm sorry, I'm going super, super fast. Okay, I have a few more minutes. And so this is kind of, I'll leave off with this question, right? So do LLMs, with the help of automation, Echo, the bot that we built, does that pass the Turing test? And so, and simple, the Turing test it's more of a thought experiment than a true test of real AGI. But it's the foundation for kind of asking, does this system pass as a human? And so it has three characters. One is the judge and the observer, and then there's two systems. One is a human and one is a computer. And the judge or the observer kind of gives these questions to both both the computer and both the human, and gets the response back to determine whether or not who is human and who is the computer. And so basically, what we found is that we've had zero detections with the use of Echo on our brands, which is over 20 brands, with hundreds and hundreds of comments, DMs, replies, captions being formed weekly, and we've had zero detections so far. And humans, of course, it's the same thing. No one's assuming human is a bot. And so my question is if you plug this formula into kind of the Turing test and say, okay, if no one's detected, the observer is right, the audience of these brands, if no one's detected that Echo is a bot or a computer, then you can make the valid argument that it almost or somewhat does pass the Turing test. And so what does this mean? Well, the Turing test is more of a thought experiment, but what this means is that although we're not we're not there to AGI yet, right? The title of my talk, Hereish, that we are, I would say, close enough to where people don't even realize it, right? If we were to pull back the curtains and explain to people, like the way we explain our brands, of how Echo works, and how we're using LLMs and automation and proxies to kind of, like I said, for lack of better words, trick the audience into thinking they're interacting with a social media manager or a brand representative or customer support, then is it any different than kind of conducting a true Turing test? My bias is, of course, saying no. I mean, yes, my bias is, of course, saying yes, that this does pass as passing the Turing test. But a lot of people like to argue and say that, the Turing test is just a thought experiment, and that's okay. Like I said, my talk is more of a fun little talk, explaining the technology that we've built, and kind of giving insight on LLMs. Letting everyone see the true power of these LLMs, and kind of dive deep into later of how these LLMs are going to transform the future of AGI. And I'm sure a lot of people have seen a lot of news with like Dolly, and Google's new product Imagen. And so yeah, I have a few more slides, but I think I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, thank you guys. Cool. I think
Thank you so much for that.
I'm
Super,
done.
super, super interesting.
Yeah, I had
Um,
to. I kind of sped through it just because my camera issues in the beginning. But
all
yeah,
good.
I wish I could have given more in depth. But yeah,
No, I thought it was great. Is there any last detail that we didn't get that you want to give us? We've got a couple
no,
minutes
like
here.
I said, so I wish I could have given more in depth talk. And if people want to reach out, I can kind of explain how our technology works, or just like LLMs in general. Um, But no, I mean, the talk is kind of more of a fun talk than a super serious one, because I find those are more intriguing, right? It kind of just touches and pokes fun at a lot of people in the machine learning community would hate this talk that I'm giving, because they're like, oh, the Turing test is just a thought experiment. We're not even close to AGI. Um, but I like having fun, right? I'm super big into sci-fi, right? And saying, oh, we're so close to AGI. And so I like
Yeah,
to poke fun at these things and find, the white lines where we can say, oh, we're kind of there. And so that's what
yeah,
we've
yeah.
done with Echo, and I think it's been super fun. And so if anyone wants to reach out, they totally can. Or if they just want to do research, right? GPT-3 is a great place to start. Just searching up how does GPT-3 work, or like LLMs, and just kind of going down that rabbit hole. And you won't be disappointed.
Cool. And are you a fan of the Turing Test, the game? Do you play the
Um,
Turing Test game?
I'm I'm a fan of the idea of it. Like I said, I think it not outdated, but I think it's a bit. It's not a true test of whether or not it's AGI, because, like I said, we've had zero detections with our bot across millions of followers, hundreds of thousands of interactions. And so, like I said, you could make the argument that our technology has passed the Turing test. And
Right.
so I think, knowing the limitations of our technology that we've built, I don't think it's an accurate measurement of true AGI, and that's just
Yeah.
the objective truth.
Yeah,
But
for
no,
sure.
I'm a fan of the idea of it, right? Because we can always say,
Yeah.
oh, our technology passes a Turing test, and everyone knows the Turing test, Alan Turing, of it being the
Of course.
foundation of AI.
Of course, yeah. Um, Definitely. Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you were able to actually figure out that there's a way to use bots to engage on the marketing front, to get people to interact with these bots like they're people. That's and then figure out how to leverage that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so like right now it's private technology. We don't even have like a wait list or anything, and I don't think we're gonna SaaS it or attempt to at any point. Right now it's just
Okay.
private tech for our clients. Um, which some people would say is stupid for investing that much amount of money. But right, I'm a 19-year-old. Uh, and so like I had the Lamborghini slide, of like, oh, I could have bought a Lamborghini, but instead I decided to hire 3 engineers at a marketing firm and build this. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's super interesting because everyone knows that there was a whole bot pandemic, and even on Twitter it's still happening, right? Because Instagram and Facebook cracked
Yeah.
down on it more. There's a huge bot pandemic on Instagram of just spam comments after comments after comments. So Zuckerberg had to do something, and lower the amount of API calls that you could commit. And so then that kind
Yeah.
of screwed us over on a marketing front. But there is a workaround with proxies, um, and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we solve
Yeah.
that problem. But yeah,
Yeah.
we are leveraging large language models. Without that, our technology would be it would be no difference than the technology that existed before, just copy and pasting heart emojis or um, beautiful picture, love this picture, and there would be no people would be like, this is a bot, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Cool. Well, I don't
Yeah,
want to
so
take too much time.
no, 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 you're fine. I do wanna tell you, so the Turing test, I don't think you got my reference earlier because 'cause I'm probably more of a puzzle game geek, but, the Turing test is actually a really cool first-person puzzle game that's on, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation,
Oh, no, I didn't
Xbox.
know.
Yeah,
I'm
so
so out of
so I
touch.
no, I think I'm just a dork. But anyway, actually a pretty cool video game. So now that you've, talked about the Turing test, so you at least have to check out the game.
I have to. I have to now.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a really good one. It looks like we do have a couple more minutes. So, does anybody have any questions for Joseph or Joseph? Any last ideas that you want to fit in here? Because I know we rushed you through a bit.
No, it's my fault. Being a computer scientist, I couldn't get my to figure out my camera. Ironic. Um, Um, no last remarks. Like I said, I kind of just want to introduce people to this space. I'm sure the other CTOs, giving talks already know LLMs or at least a vague concept of what they are. And I'm sure they have their opinions on them, right? Whether I mean, it's a spectrum of people being bullish on AGI, like me,
Mm,
just gunning for it, and a lot of people saying we're not even close. Like 2045 is
mhm.
even we're not going to be there. Um, I'm more optimistic than those people, and so I like to give these talks and piss off the machine learning community, and say, hey, look, we built this. It's not true AGI, but it's good enough.
Yeah,
And so that's kind of I think this is a start, right? Like marketing and
yeah.
ad tech technologies. I think this is a start to AGI because I don't think it's necessarily one agent that trumps it all. Like some kind of what was the oh my gosh, the Terminator movie, the Skynet, right? I don't think it's something like
Mhm.
Skynet to where it just takes over all systems and completely changes the way humanity works. I think it's a culmination of hundreds, if not thousands, of technologies. Oh, I think we do have a
We do have a question,
question.
and I have one more. I have a hardball for you after hardball question for you after that.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, the question in the chat: what drives you to be technologically involved with marketing? What more do you think your agency can bring to the advancement of present and future technology?
Yeah, so what drove me to being technology involved in marketing was like I said, just growing up and learning how to code at like 10 or 11. Um, and I don't know why. I just always wanted to run a tech company. And so I had a huge midlife crisis at 18 years old saying, okay, I've built this marketing agency.
I
We've worked
hope
with some
not
big,
midlife.
that was a joke. We've
Be
worked with some
terrible.
big brands. Um, but I'm just not I'm not having fun, right?
Mm,
It's super bad to say that, but I like to have fun. I like to build things, and
mm,
so I was like, well, is there ways we can introduce machine learning or stuff that I learned previously to kind of iterate and build on top of what we have creatively, right? Because it's a creative agency.
mhm.
And so, I went down this rabbit hole of LLMs, and it was perfect timing, right? Almost fate, to where GPT-3 just came out, and it was the same time I was researching ways we could iterate something like that, and if it was even possible. Um, and so the next question is, what do you think your agency can bring to the advancement of present and future technology?
Mm,
Um, that's a tough one. I think we're continuing to iterate. So like we have a few other projects on the back burner that use something called automatic IPA. So it's just image popularity assessment. So it kind of assesses whether or not, simply put, so I can finish. Is it assesses whether or not? Oh, we want to introduce the next speaker.
yeah. It you can finish your answer. I just
Okay, yeah. It,
yeah,
it, it just
just tune it up.
It so simply put, it just assesses whether or not an image is going to be popular, like running ads on Facebook, posting images, and so we have a lot of technologies using that, and then of course just natural language processing, and that's kind of machine learning side, which is where also LLMs fall under. Um, and so I really don't know, what where we'll stand, but I do think we're one of the agencies actually kind of pushing the envelope of what's
Mm,
possible with machine learning, because a lot of other
mhm,
agencies that do say they have a lab or an R&D division, um, they're just doing basic things with like NLP, and it's just very very rudimentary stuff from a machine learning
Mhm.
perspective. But the stuff that we're doing, I think, is really pushing the envelope. And I mean, like to put it simply, is we've had talks with like $1 million like Fortune 500 clients, having to explain to them why we got temporary banned on Instagram. Um, and so just being willing to take these risks,
Yeah.
some would call them um, immature or brave. You can choose which one. Willing to take these risks is kind of how you solve
Yeah,
these hard problems, and so that's what I would say is
for
what we bring
sure.
to the table.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so, so much, Joseph, for joining today and sharing all this with us. It's been really fun.
Thank you so much for having me.